look at some food, some terminologies. We'll look at some terminologies that could be used for during the lectures. So look at some terminologies as well. Okay. So to break it down, we all know that food is either a solid, a liquid, anything that we eat that goes to our digestive system and provides nutrition for us so that our cells, our body cells, tissues, and organs can grow and function well. But we also know that anytime we talk about safety, we are interested in creating a situation where there is no harm, where there is no harm, or where there's no hazard.
A lot of fanfare. Level 1. Since then, we have been waiting for level 2 and level 3. So this is how.
Okay. So everything we'll be talking about, we'll be looking at situations where a hazard could be prevented so that there's no harm and then safety is not compromised. So we'll start with a few terms now. We'll look at what the foodborne illness or food poison is all about. When we say food poisoning, it is a term that we use to describe symptoms or illness that arise from ingesting, that is taking in food or water that contains an infectious agent or a toxic substance. So I believe we are all in Ghana and we've all heard so much about galamsey and the impact and effect it's having on our water bodies, our soils, to the extent that these days our vegetables, our roots and tubers like cassava, cocoyam, yam, has been found to contain mercury and other heavy metals which are used in this galamsey process. So I believe you must have heard that these heavy metals like mercury are very toxic, and so they can cause food poison. So when we say food-borne illness or food poisoning, then we are using that term to describe any symptoms or illnesses that arise or occur when you take in food, when you ingest food or water that may contain an infectious agent. An infectious agent like microorganisms, pathogenic microorganisms that cause disease, like salmonella, typhi, salmonella, paratyphi, like listeria, like Escherichia coli. All these are infectious agents. They carry certain substances that when they live on your food and you take it in, can cause you illness. So for the food poison or foodborne, it covers both infectious agents and toxic chemicals, like I've explained to you. Then we come to food safety. When we say food safety, it is more of assessing the the wholesomeness of food so that you can ensure that there is no harmful substances present in that food that may cause you any illness, sickness, or injury. So that's why we talk about food safety. When you are able to assess the wholesomeness of food, or that it has no substance that may cause any sickness. Then we come to foodborne illness or food poisoning. That is the first one I talked about. Then we move on to food intoxication. Food intoxication is a type of foodborne illness that is caused by toxins that are produced by microorganisms present in food. So, for example, in some years back, there was a research that scared Ghanaians because they tested some Ga kinky and realized that it contained certain chemicals that could cause cancer. So there was a whole scare that avoid Ga kinky, it causes cancer. The whole story is that cereals, maize that is used in preparing the Ga kinky could be affected by a fungus, a mold that is called mycotoxin. It produces a substance called mycotoxin. And the danger or the seriousness of this mycotoxin is that it is never destroyed by heat. So, unlike microorganisms, which either produce their toxin within or outside, when you heat food to a certain temperature, these microorganisms can die. But when it comes to these mycotoxins that are produced by these fungus or fungi, they do not die. So you can heat the kenke, cook it, boil it for 2-3 hours, and they are there. And they have toxin, they are toxic in nature and causes cancer. That is not to say that every guy kenke can cause cancer. Fortunately, unfortunately, when you see fungus growing on bread, when you see fungus growing on bread, you can cut the covering, the outer thing, and think, oh, I've taken off the mold, let me eat. But if you know a little bit about mold, fungi, you have molds and yeast, they grow long stalks called hyphae and root-like systems called rhizoids. And so when you think you have cut the surface of the bread, and so that fluffy thing you don't see anymore, or your fancy kinky, you've cut that part, be sure that the rest of the structure is in the kinky that you cannot see with your naked eye. And so we say that it is better to avoid. It is better to avoid food that has growth of molds or yeast on, because you never know how much it has affected the food. So that is the intoxication, the toxins, when they are present, can cause serious problems. Then we have food infection. We have different types of microorganisms. We have beneficial ones, like the ones that are used in fermentation. So those ones, the what do you call that group? That you use in bacillus species and all those ones, they are beneficial. Those are the ones that are used in fermentation. So fermentation of milk, dairy into yogurt, fermentation of milk into cheese, brewing brewing using yeast so that you can produce wine, you can produce beer, you can produce malt, etc. These type of microorganisms are grouped as beneficial microorganisms. We also have other microorganisms that are referred to as pathogenic. Pathogenic because they are disease causing. So those are the hepatitis A to E. Those are the Salmonella typhi, paratyphi. Those are the Listeria monocytogenes. Those are a lot of them. And so we say that food intoxication is a type of foodborne illness that is caused by toxins that are produced by microorganisms that are present in food. And then the infection are caused by pathogenic microorganisms that produce infectious substances in water or food. Let's continue with our terms. We talk of cross contamination. The word cross tells you that it moves from one place to other. So when we talk of cross contamination, it is the transfer of disease causing microorganisms. Okay, it is the transfer of disease causing microorganisms or toxins from contaminated food to ready to eat food. So, for example, when you cut meat that you've gone to buy from Mayanka or where they slaughter and sell meat, they kill they slaughter the animal in the morning, 7 o'clock, and leave the flesh on the table with flies jumping here and there, with flies introducing all kinds of microbes into it, and you go and buy it around 4 p.m. and you take it home. When you get there, you take your chopping board and you cut this meat on it. Once you are done, you wash your meat, you put it in the pan, you add your onions, cut your onions over it, salt to steam it and season it. Immediately you are done without washing the chopping board with soap and making sure that you've taken care of any remnants from the meat. If you should put your vegetables on that same chopping board and cut, then you can be sure that should there be any microbes in the meat, these could be cross moved, cross contaminated. It will cross from the board into your vegetables and bring about cross contamination. I've given a good explanation. Very soon I'll ask others to also provide some. Then we talk of food hygiene, which involves all conditions and measures that are vital, essential to ensure the safety and suitability of food at all stages of the food chain. So hygiene means cleanliness, keeping the place, the standard such that these harmful microorganisms cannot grow and cause any harm. The pathogenic microorganisms, I've spoken about them already. They are disease causing microorganisms. The parasites are organisms that grow and feed on other organisms. Yep. Mhm. Then we move to pesticides. Any chemical that is used to control pest. Like we talked about the fungi in cereals, etc. Then we talk about residue. When you use pesticides and they are in excess, then they can be carried into the food system and cause problems. So you have okra, the blights, those insects are disturbing it, you spray. And without waiting for a rain to fall or the chemicals to degrade, you pick some of this okra and you make okra stew. If you eat it, you're in trouble because the residue of the pesticides will get inside your body and cause serious harm. Then we have what we call tolerance level. Tolerance level is the maximum amount of a residue that is permitted in food. We are making noise that galamsey will kill all of us because there are certain chemicals that are not even allowed to appear in food. Examples are the heavy metals like mercury. That is why we are all worried that with all the galamsey and all the mercury moving into people's, it is a huge, huge risk. And so certain chemicals, our bodies can tolerate them up to a point. And so we say the tolerance level is the maximum amount of a residue that is permitted in food during either processing or whatever it is. Then we have additives. We have additives. Normally, we have the main food that we prepare. Additives are certain substances that normally would not be part of the main food. Mm. So you are preparing, let's say, fried rice. You use your green onions. You add other things. When you finish and you decide to add a little turmeric, a spice, to your fried rice, it becomes an additive because it is not really part of the main, what do you call it, food. It's an addition. And these additives can be in different forms. We have additive substances that are added either accidentally, either intentionally, during processing, etc. And so you can have food colors, they are additives, spices, they are additives, uh, food flavors, they are additives, etc., etc. Then we have what we call um, toxicity, the ability of a substance to cause harm to living things. Then we have the tolerance level. We also have margin of safety. So the margin of safety is the level between concentrations that would normally be used and that at which a hazard exists. So, like I told you, sometimes you can have certain chemicals in food that may not make the food dangerous because they may be at levels that your body can tolerate, so tolerance level. But between that tolerance level and a level that will cause hazard, harm to you, we call a margin of safety. Margin of safety. Then we have the adulteration, where you intentionally alter the quality of food. When you grind, how do you call that thing with you? Business houses, cola. When you grind cola and add it to your powdered pepper, it is an act of intentionally altering the quality of your pepper, and it is referred to as adulteration. When Sudan 4 is added to palm oil to give it a reddish bright color, it is an adulteration. You substitute a substance which is an inferior substance, or you remove some valuable ingredient from any food. When you do that, we say you have adulterated the food. So these are some few terms that you need to know. Now, why is foodborne illness a critical concern? Why should we be worried about foodborne illness? As humans, we need to survive. We need to stay well and we need to function. Okay. Food poisoning, etc., could create a lot of diseases and also increase the burden of treatments. And so, to be able to survive, to be able to sustain healthy, being healthy, comes along with eating safe food. In recent times, there have been trends in global production, processing, distribution, and preparation of food that are creating avenues for a safe global supply of food. When we say food safety, we believe it contributes to the goal of reducing the burden of foodborne and nutrition related diseases. And when these are reduced, then definitely we are promoting health. By observing food safety, we also help to ensure safety along the food chain. That is a form of production. So it gets onto the table for consumption. Who are the most at risk when it comes to these foodborne illnesses? Usually, pregnant women, they're developing fetuses in their wombs. They are at a very high risk. That's why they said when you go to the mining area, women are losing their babies, or if even they are lucky and it reaches full term, the baby will be born without a limp, half of the face will be gone, the face could turn on the neck and look backwards. All these are because these fetuses are fragile. And so the least exposure of the mother to these dangerous chemicals can kill these fetuses. Infants, children, young children, especially those who have immune system issues, they are the most affected. The next group is the elderly. As you grow, your tissues, your cells, your tissues, your organs all reduce in potency. They are not able to function as well as they used to. They become compromised. And so you see that the elderly also have a very high risk when it comes to food that is not safe. The cause of harm is great. Then we have people who have chronic diseases. You remember chronic diseases like diabetes, like high blood pressure, etc. When COVID came in, you remember? They used to say that people with diabetes, cancer, hypertension, they had a higher risk to catch the virus and get the disease than people without any of these chronic diseases. Then we have those who have the certain debilitating diseases like HIV, etc., AIDS, etc., because it compromises their immune system. And so the least exposure to these chemicals could be fatal for the individual. There are some other people who receive immune system suppressing drugs, such as those who are, recipients of transplants, cancer patients, etc. They also have a high risk, and so we
Hello,
need
bro.
in case. Yes.
Please, your voice is down.
I am really screaming. Is it better now?
Yes, please.
I'm really screaming. Uh, so these are the people who have a higher risk of, being affected by food that is not safe. And if we should think of what causes food-borne illnesses, we can first think of microorganisms. We have microorganisms because they can contaminate food from the farm gate to the table. When you pluck tomatoes from the farm, they fall on the ground, they get soil, on it. This soil, we all know that microorganisms can be found everywhere in soil, in air, in water. And so these microorganisms are able to affect food right from, the farm gate. When you water lettuce and other things with vegetables with contaminated food, you know, you will get these ending up in the food. That is why in the galamsey prone areas, their foodstuffs are containing these chemicals because their roots and other things pick them from the soil. Says that when they bear any fruit, it gets there and then it becomes a health hazard for everyone who consumes that food. Microorganisms can also contaminate food at any point during slaughtering, packaging, even transport, processing, etc. From unclean equipment from your own employees. That is why when you go to these food industries, employees are expected to observe GMPs, good manufacturing practices, where they cover their hair, they keep their nails short, where they wear aprons so that they don't have these chemicals and other things coming directly in touch with their bodies, etc. And also, when you look at the protocols that are used in food preservation training, etc., it could also be compromised to bring about, unsafe food. Hmm. Okay, so what causes most of the foodborne? You could have toxins from food. Earlier on, we looked at the term food intoxication, and we said when either a microorganism is producing some toxins or there are toxic materials that are produced by certain microorganisms that are so potent that they are not even destroyed by heat. There are also naturally occurring plants that could be toxic, and then that could also contaminate food. Chemical residues in food, such as pollutants, could also serve as a threat to food safety. When you look at the sources, we can talk of examples of foodborne illnesses as common in the following: undercooked or raw meats. They're a very good source for these microorganisms. When you have ready to eat food that comes into contact with raw meat and other things, it could also be contaminated. Milk can be contaminated by the feces, any infections at the udder of the cow before milking, etc. So those are some of the sources. When you get bacteria, we've been talking so much about bacteria, but we also need to look at
Prof, I'd like to do a little bit of acknowledgement. I have a
other, what do you call it, microorganisms like the viruses, bacteria, etc.
Father is here. Thank you very much. My father is not here. They so I decided to wear hat. He literally owned it. Go to him. And my mother is also here. Thank you all for bearing with me.
Gastroenteritis, inflammation of the lining of your stomach
My mentor,
caused
there
by
are many of them here.
microorganisms, hepatitis A,
I'd like to speak
B,
about
C,
especially
D,
Professor
E.
Sanitation,
Can also
creating
contaminate
opportunity
food
for me
during
to become a
harvesting,
fellow
processing, etc.
of the academy. He didn't give me a choice. He asked me to bring my baby. And then there are colleagues here. Colleagues I have given a hard
And
time.
then you have certain parasites that derive benefits from their host, like the protozoa, etc. Helminths are the worms. Helminths are the worms, so earthworm, all those worms. Then we have tapeworm, which is also a helminth. Then we have the protozoa, which causes waterborne illnesses. We have Giardia duodenal, which causes giardiasis. And so all these are microorganisms you cannot see with your eye, which can cause issues for health issues for us. Sometimes you have certain microorganisms releasing toxins, which can cause a variety of symptoms, like diarrhea, vomiting, etc. And when we talk of toxicity, it could be you could have enterotoxins, which is also the other hand targets the gastrointestinal system, and often cause symptoms of severe diarrhea and vomiting. Okay, so some fungi produce certain poisons, which I mentioned earlier, like the mycotoxins, which are very deadly because they can damage your organs, cause cancer, etc. So when food has or shows signs of growth on it, it's better you avoid it since you do not know a type of mold it is. You stay safer by not eating it. Sometimes certain foods like the mussels, adult clams, and other seafood could be contaminated by algae in the water and creates sickness. We can apply food safety, the concept of food safety to our day-to-day life, especially how to select foods during shopping. If you have to buy frozen foods, you have to buy fresh fish, certain perishable foods like fish, meat, etc. Then you should, those things should be the last to buy. Those things should be the last to buy. So that immediately you buy home, to get home and put them in the fridge or freezer. When you buy canned foods, you avoid cans that are dented, or when you open and it has a foul odor, you do not have to eat. You just need to talk to whoever is selling and change it. You are buying it with money, so you should get the right thing. Remember, these cans are usually lined with certain things to prevent the food from touching the can. And so immediately these things are compromised. It means then that your food becomes more of a chemical. That could be very dangerous or bad for you. Sometimes, instead of going to weigh maybe the thigh of the cow or something, you go and some small, small pre-cut pieces is what you want and you pick. So these all are tips that you may want to put in place when you are thinking of how to proceed with your work. Okay, we all say bulk purchases is good, but not always. There are certain foods, fish like this, when you keep it in the freezer for a long time, it becomes rancid. You cannot, it doesn't take cold again. It becomes flat. And so I don't think it's a matter of we can't do, but it's a matter of what do we do. So I hope their board will meet so that you'll be giving some, um, information and things as to how to avoid some of these things. When you go to the market, don't go and buy pre-cut kontobere and those things. I tell people, do you know the number of ants, spiders that they cut together with the leaves? Instead of buying your own and going home to wash it very well before you cut. So avoid buying pre-cut produce and buy foods that are enough for a short time so that you don't accumulate too much of it. You learn to wash your hands thoroughly with hot soapy water using the washroom. Then you also pay attention to your counters, cutting boards, dishes, etc. Yeah, okay. There just of a board, chopping board. It should be easy to clean, non-porous. Um, Frozen food should be thawed in the fridge, not outside, because immediately you leave it outside, microorganisms will start, gallivanting on it. And the fact that it's always important to wash your fruits and flowing water is something that you want to consider too. Then when you're cooking, you cook so your food is well done. You know, when you travel, when they cook, especially for meat, fish, etc., they don't want it well done. You see that when you cut, you see some blood and things. No, we say it's always good to have your meat well done so that you don't have any issues. Okay. So when it comes to whether you know whether a fish is fresh, your eyes should be bright, right? When it comes to whether it is cooked or baked, the fins are dull, etc. And for seafoods, they should look translucent or shiny. Mhm. Okay. Then we come to when you are storing and reheating food. When you are storing and reheating food, when you don't keep foods at the right temperature, these microorganisms will come in. Well, within microbiology, we said these microorganisms thrive under different conditions, under different temperature, etc., water activity, etc. So storage is very important. Hot food might be kept hot above 460 degrees. Cold food must be kept cold, and that's why you can leave soup or stew in the fridge and yet starts to go moldy or bad after a period of time. It's always important that you reheat leftover food. Okay. Mhm. Then we come to the individual microorganisms. Mhm. The mode of transmission, so we'll start with hepatitis A. Gets through your food, fecal, oral contamination of food, water, etc. It stays in your system. It multiplies, reproduces in the liver. It's like the malaria parasites, goes to the bowel, and later released into the small intestines. What are the symptoms? Nausea, diarrhea, fever, jaundice, fatigue, etc. Okay, then we come to the prevention. When you are hygienic conscious, you make sure that your environments are clean. You always wash your hand before you touch food. You keep proper sanitary handling conditions, proper disposal of your waste and excreta, thorough cooking of your food, and the use of vaccine. There's a vaccine called Havrix, which helps with treatment and avoidance of getting the hepatitis virus. Okay. Then we have the hepatitis E, A, B, C, D, E. The symptoms are there: nausea, diarrhea, fever, jaundice, etc. And their control is mostly practicing good hygiene, sanitary handling, taking good care of your disposal of waste and excreta, cooking thoroughly well, etc. Then we have the Vibrio cholerae. Vibrio cholerae is a bacterium that causes cholera and diarrhea. Okay. The signs and symptoms are there. How it is spread, releasing toxins, causing inflammation of the gut, and then the diarrhea follows. Human carriers, infected shellfish, those who like shellfish, because they are at the bottom of whether it's a lagoon or a river or whatever, they tend to pick up algae and all kinds of things. And so when you cook and you don't cook them well, you bring disease to yourself. Okay. Then we have the cholera and diarrhea. The signs and symptoms, we have the loose, loose watery stools, etc. So you try to avoid drinking untreated water, untreated milk, um, unclean foods, as all the preventive ways. Then we have the typhoid, the paratyphi. So the Salmonella typhi or Salmonella paratyphi causes it. Their mode of transmission from raw meat, poultry, eggs, fish, pasteurized milk, orange juice, and some products of these things that we've talked about.
instead there will be inaugural lecture taking place here to be delivered
Okay.
Professor Ladeu,
Can we get some people also talking so that I can rest more?
an emeritus professor of surgery,
Hello.
speaking on the topic definition of
Hello. Can we get some people to also discuss talk so that I can rest more? I'm tired. Mm-hmm. So we got to which slide? Okay, since no one is interested in continue the discussion, let me continue. Mm. So we've talked about how you, during preparation of food, what you should do, keeping your frozen foods frozen, keeping your hot foods hot. Uh, as we know about the conditions for microorganisms, okay, yeah, that these are met so that if you put, let's say, soup in the fridge and you leave it for too long, it can still go bad because there are microorganisms that can even grow in the fridge. Mm. So from time to time, you bring your soup out and you heat it before you return to the food. We talked about cooking. In Africa, in Ghana, we cook our food very well. We don't just do it light and there'll be it will be half cooked and we'll be eating. We cook our food very well. Our environment, because it's warm, is good for growth of a lot of microorganisms. So if you don't treat your food you don't cook it very well for the heat to destroy them as much as possible, then you may end up getting problems. So yes, it's important that when you cook your food, you cook it very well. Mm. We've talked about storage, storing, and reheating. When you eat food and some is left, the leftovers, it's important that you reheat it thoroughly. And also, you should store any food that is peeled or cut up. Uh, then we get to the hepatitis. Hepatitis A. We've talked about the a microorganism that causes it, the conditions, the prevention, etc. Hepatitis B, E, the same. Hepatitis E continued cholera, diarrhea, all the signs, the symptoms, the prevention, hand washing after defecation, purification of water, treatment of sewage, all these are there. Then the cholera and the diarrhea, the typhoid and the paratyphoid. So the mode of here of the microbe is very important through water to food, contaminated food, contaminated water. Mm. Then we have prevention of typhoid, paratyphoid, sanitary handling of food, purification of water supplies, thorough cooking of food, etc. Then we have a Escherichia coli. Okay. Then we have After Escherichia coli, we have Clostridium botulinum. Their mode of transmission, the symptoms. Okay, then we have the Clostridium botulinum. Which also causes, food contamination and illness. Hmm. We have campylobacteriosis caused by the bacterium Campylobacter. The mode of transmission and the symptoms, the prevention. Then we have the listeriosis. Listeria causes listeriosis. Mode of transmission, water and oil. It can easily contaminate vegetables or pasteurized milk, cheese, etc. The symptoms include fever, muscle weakness, nausea, digestion, etc. Then you have the staphylococcus, food poisoning caused by Staphylococcus aureus with the, what do you call it? Okay, so we have done unit 1 and 2. Let's review, then we can continue so that you can also do some talking. So we need 3 people to review what we've done so far before we continue to add more. Yes, I'm waiting. I need people to recap what you've done so far so that we can move on with chapter unit 3. Are people really behind their computers and phones?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so let's review. Let's recap what we've done so far before we continue. Okay. Class rep. If no one talk to the one I'll call. Class rep.
Hello, madam.
Yes. I need you to recap whatever we've done so far. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes,
Uh,
because of the
Madam,
questions. So, yes.
Prof.
Yes.
From the beginning, your voice was audible, but along the line, I lost you. So the little I heard, I will share.
Okay.
Uh, we discussed about the food intoxication,
Mm-hmm.
which is a type of foodborne disease caused by toxins, which are produced by uh, poor hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
We went on to look at the cross contamination, which is the transfer of disease causing microorganisms or toxins from contaminated food
Mm-hmm.
to ready to eat food. Then we look at adulteration,
Mm-hmm.
which occurs when intentionally or unintentionally the quality of food offered for sale has an additive or substitute of inferior substance.
Mm-hmm.
That was where I got to when I lost you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, yes, well. Yes, what about that? Yes, who else? She said something at least. What about the rest?
Hello, Prof.
Yes.
We've also talked about why foodborne illness should be a critical concern.
Mm-hmm.
And we said that safe food affects the survival, well-being,
Mm-hmm.
and function of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And we also said that food safety contributes to the goal of reducing the burden of foodborne and nutri- uh, nutrition-related diseases that promotes health
Mm-hmm.
and help ensure safety along the food chain. And we've
Okay.
also seen some of the people that uh, are at the risks
Mm-hmm.
for foodborne illnesses. And we talk about pregnant women, that is a developing fetus. We talk about people with chronic diseases,
Mm-hmm.
and also people that are receiving immune system suppressing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And we also talk about the causes of most foodborne illnesses to be microorganisms in food and toxins from food.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we said that microorganisms are contaminate food on the farm during production of the crops, where some people use contaminated water for irrigation and all that. And we also say microorganisms can contaminate meat too. Toxins from food. Food intoxication may result from consuming food in which microorganisms have, and they are also natural occurring. Am I lost? Plants and marine toxins contaminate food.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about the sources of foodborne illnesses to be uncooked or raw meat,
Mm-hmm.
food contaminated with juice from raw meat, contaminated milk with feces. And it's also said that bacteria mostly cause foodborne infections. And we talk about some of the bacteria.
Yes, and
Yes.
so the specific bacteria that causes
Yeah.
um disease, specific disease.
Mm.
So there are several of them. Okay, let's continue. Thank you, and thank you so much. The two people who spoke, thank you.
Welcome.
I hope the others are following because I don't know why they wouldn't share what they heard. Yes. Okay. Let's see. But to know the signs, the symptoms, the origin, you have to do a lot of reading in your work. Mm, okay. Cholera, typhoid. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about food safety. We've talked about how food safety comes about, and now we want to look at other sources like the mycotoxins, the aflatoxins. Okay, so the other sources we've talked about some already, like the mycotoxins, and then aflatoxin, etc. Um, okay. Oh. I don't know whether people made an attempt to even read. I don't know. Did you people go through the slides? That's why I don't like giving students slides. When you give them slides, they don't read though, because they know that as for the slides, when it's getting to exams, I'll just go through. But you forget that the slides are just um points, summary points. And so to be able to add a flash, it's important that you go to the slides and try to read around, to make proper notes. And that's the only way that you will get it well. Let me get out of just a few minutes. How many? Having a meeting? Okay. Mhm. Okay. Let's continue our discussion. The mycotoxins that I spoke about is not only found in it's not only found in cereals, as I mentioned, maize, etc. We have Aspergillus flavus. We have the Oryza group for rice. We have the Aspergillus for granules. And so all these are sources of production of toxic substances that can get into food and create problems. Mm. Um, okay. So with all those examples, we can now talk about the principle of food safety has a GMPs, which is unitary. GMPs, yep. Principles of food safety accept HACCP, GMPs, risk assessment and management. Mhm. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. What is HACCP? It's an acronym. What is what is HACCP? Mm-hmm. It's an acronym. What does it mean? HACCP. HACCP. What does it mean?
Prof. Hazard analysis critical control points.
Thank you. Hazard analysis critical control point. And when I started, I said a hazard is anyone that can cause anything, sorry, that can cause harm. So hazard analysis critical control points, CCPs. When it comes to the critical control points, it's let me put it this way. So for every process, you should have the steps of the process that leads to the final product. Okay. So once you identify, so first and foremost, you have to put down the process. Usually you can do it in a flow diagram. So for example, if we are making gakinki, what will be the process? The process will be getting your maize, cleaning it by removing stones, other inert material, soaking it. Okay. Okay. So let's get an example to use to understand the hazard analysis critical control points. For example, if we want to make car kinky, where do we start from? Mhm. Anyone on the platform who knows how to make car kinky? Anyone on the platform who knows how to make car kinky? Just give us the process, then I'll take it step by step and we'll discuss. Anyone on the platform who knows how to make car kinky? Oh, so there's no one on this line. Yeah, so okay. So let me give you the process. So for example, you want to make kinky. You first have to get your maize. You could get it from any market. I mean, Cape Coast, say Kotokraba market or Abra market. When you bring it, you need to clean it first. You see that sometimes you see some innate materials. So you remove all those things, stones, etc. And then you wash it. You put a lot of water over it. And then you wash it. Once you wash it, it has to be, if it's cake, then we leave it over 3 nights, 3 days. And when we feel that it has fermented enough, then you take it out of the water. Then uh, you go and grind it. And then you come and add water to the paste. And you make out, your condo. You leave it for the 3 days to ferment. And then you also have to get the corn husk. Remove it one by one, wash it and clean it nicely. And then, okay, and then it gets to the third part where you have to divide it into three and take two and make. Okay, so you pick a little, you make it into, you add water, and then you put it on the fire and turn it till it becomes thick and cooks. Then you're able to return. Then you are able to make the dough, and then you divide it into three parts. You take two, you add water, and then you put it on fire and you stir it till it becomes the paste, and then you mix it with some raw flour, and then you cook it. Then you add it to the one that is still fresh, which is not cooked yet. Mix it and then make it into the balls. So now we are looking at the steps. We are going to try to identify probable hazards. We are going to try to identify critical control points, and then we are able to um, talk about how you mold it into the husk and then tighten it and put it back inside and put a little of the condo there. Okay, so let's look at these processes I've told you about. Okay, so let's see where we think we can have hazards. hmm Let's see. We have to do it together. If you don't contribute, you don't understand the process. It says several participants left the meeting. Why? They are tired. Let me see how many people are left. Oh, okay. Let's continue. So now I've given the process of how to make ga kinky. With these processes, where do you think a hazard could appear? Let's discuss so that we can understand and follow what you are doing. Where do you think that a hazard could appear? Abigail. hmm Abigail, you can speak.
Hello, Prof.
Yeah. uh
Yeah, place with the corn husk. If we
hmm
don't clean it properly, hazard can occur over there.
hmm
And then with the
Okay.
the
So
corn
what are the probable
itself, the
hazards?
maize. Yes, that one too.
Mhm.
If we don't remove the unwanted particles before the hazard can
Okay.
happen over there, even if the water we use to soak
It's
is not
okay.
clean, hazard
Mm.
can occur over there.
Okay. Another hand was raised. Please, you can
Thank
talk.
you.
Mhm. Thank you too. Another hand was raised. You can talk. Or the person
Yeah,
has been
Prof.
raised. Uh-huh.
Uh, even during the soaking of the corn,
Mm-hmm.
if maybe we soak it for too long or in dirty water,
Mm-hmm.
hazard can occur.
Yes, hazards are kind of headed. So at least I'm happy a lot of you have been able to identify probable or possible points where hazards can come. Now we want to look
Even
at
at
what
the
we. Mm-hmm.
please, I think even at the where you mold it,
Yes.
uh, when you are molding
That's
it
it.
to other, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at every
Okay.
stage, if you don't take care, it can occur at every stage.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now we've seen all these hazards. What we are saying is that some of these hazards are less serious than others. They are less dangerous like others. So, for example, once we make the balls of the kinky, we are going to cook. We are going to cook it. So, it is possible that during the cooking, some hazards that entered the food could be destroyed again. So, at that point, we say that it is a critical control point one. That's why we have two C's, HACCP, two C's, critical control points. So for the one, you could say that so you want to see the ones that are very dangerous, then the very critical ones. So you can have critical point one, critical point two. Those that the risk is so high. So for example, when you finish boiling and during the storage, you don't cover it. You leave it at a place that mice come and urinate on it and walk over it in the night. Then what happens? Then all the cooking you did has lost its value. So it becomes a critical point. So let's see which point you would call CCP1, the critical control point one, and let's see where you think it should be critical control point two. Yes, I'm waiting for you. So where which points would you say is more serious? The harm is more serious and could go beyond where it has been seen, and the other. mm, the once you are able to tell me the difference between the critical point one and two, then we are ready to go. Hmm. Okay, so I'm waiting. Yeah, Francisca.
Prof, I may say that the critical control point one will be during the fermentation
Okay.
and the milling
Mm-hmm.
and the milling. But the critical control point two for me will be uh, boiling the wrap kinky.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Now we have our garlic. We boiled it. If we were to add pepper to it, and then fried fish or something to make a complete meal. So we grind our tomato, pepper, onions, and cut some fresh tomatoes and onions into it. Where do you think the risk will be high? Now we are adding our fresh pepper, tomatoes, onions to the process. Yes, I'm listening. Don't you think the pepper will be a very high risk?
Yes, Prof.
CCP2? Yes, because you are going to eat it raw. You are not even going to boil it or anything like that.
Yes,
So
please.
the least contamination will be very serious. So that could be a critical point too. Okay, then when you add the fried fish, the fish was fried very early. Okay. And what is the basis of all this HACCP thing? Using that tool, HACCP. In the food industry in the past, we talked about total management, total quality management, TQM. But with time, they realized that, especially for the food industry where everything was done in batches, you produce, and when you finish, they will take the, what do you call it? You produce, and when you finish, you need to keep it together, you need to store it. And when we started, I said, when it comes to food safety, we talk about the food right from the farm gate to the table. So that is what it is. This HACCP principle was first introduced into the food system in, is it 1973? It's in the slide there. Yeah. And it started with just three principles. Is there any I'm using my phone so I can't see the full thing. So please, if you raise your hand and you realize that I'm not noticing you, you talk, okay? Because I'm using my phone so I can't see everyone. Okay, so in the past we were doing total quality management where you produce a product and at the end of the day you test before it goes to the market. When you test and it doesn't pass the standards that it's supposed to have, it doesn't pass, then it means then that you have to throw that whole batch away. So they realized that it was costing too much. So they decided to look at the production as a process, as a flow diagram. You know what flow diagram is? Do you know what a flow diagram is?
No, Prof.
Google it. It will give you samples. Say examples of flow diagram. Google it. It will give you an example and it will show you. It's just putting whatever food you're producing into the stepwise processes. So, like we described, getting maize, cleaning it, picking out the stones and everything, moving on to soak it, using clean water and all those things. That's a flow guideline. It gives you the step by step. So that the production, you'll be able to identify where to put your harm, probable harm, the risk, your CCP1, CCP2, etc. And so when they introduced that, they realized that it saved them a lot because at each point you are checking the quality of the product. So that at any point in time, should you have any problem, you would have wasted just that part. If it's something that can be corrected, you can correct it immediately. If it cannot be corrected and you have to discard, the cost will still be less than completing the process. And when it's ready to go to the market, you realize that it doesn't pass and the whole thing has to be, So that is why they introduced the hazard principle in 1973. And it started with three principles: identifying the hazards, identify the critical control points, and then being able to, um, the P, being able to put in place measures that could reduce this harm as much as possible. But as time went on, more additions came. So it moved from three, at a point it was six, at a point it got to nine, at a point it got to 12, 10, 10. Where, how do you say it? Taking records was included, which you could use the records that you take to monitor your production and how often occurrences came, as a way of managing better the process. So you realize that it's increased to a point where by the time you got to the 10 steps, the 10 principles, you had a way where if there was a problem, you go back to correct it and evaluate it, from one point to the other. So when you go through the slides, you see the three principles, the seven principles, and the 10 principles, and the years they each occurred, came into being. Then we have the GMPs, general manufacturing practices. Usually when it goes into the food industry, I don't know how many of you have been able to visit such places. They do not allow just any visitor to come in. You have a water bath where disinfectant is placed in. You need to wear boots, the appropriate, footwear, and dip it in the disinfectant or bath. And then you are able to infect your shoes, under your shoes, etc. Okay. So for the general manufacturing practices, like covering your hair, because we know that our hair, because of especially women, we don't wash our hair every day. And so it accumulates a lot of microorganisms. If God was to open your eyes to look at your friend and the total number of microorganisms in her hair, you'll be screaming. So we say that when you're cooking, cover your hair. Cover your hair. I'm teaching. Yeah. Yeah, so covering your hair, keeping short fingernails, not talking during processing of food, wearing the right footwear, making sure that all rubbish is placed in the dustbin, which is usually emptied, to prevent mice coming there, to prevent cockroaches. All these are good manufacturing practices, things that you do under hygienic conditions. And all these things also help to minimize risk, to minimize the introduction of harm into the food, so that it is safe for everyone to consume. Then we have um, the risk assessments. And analysis is also a concept. You always have to analyze the risk. And risk is the likelihood of an occurrence of harm is measured in risk. Likelihood of, harm occurring. Mm. Okay. So as we talk about these tools, we bear in mind some of the terms that we talked about earlier, like the tolerance level, like the margin of safety, etc. They apply when we are talking about how best to keep your food safe, how best to work under hygienic conditions, etc. Do you understand all that we've been talking about this far? I need two people to talk about what we just talked about. Yes, I need two people to tell me about what I've said so far so that I'll know that you understand. Oh, no one is talking. The hazard analysis critical control points, the GMP's manufacturing practices, and the risk assessment and analysis. Yes, or if not for anything, the slides are with you. You can look at them and see something. I'm sure you're all tired anyway. I'm more tired than you are. Okay, so let's talk, quick, so that we can call it a day. At least if we are able to discuss the hazard in the GMPs and the risk assessment, then I'll take it that at least we've done unit 1 to 3. We've covered 1, 2, 3.
Okay, Prof, let me try.
Try.
Okay, the hazard analysis critical control points. We said as for you to identify this, you must first look at the process.
Mhm.
So we've taken the process and we consider the process of making the ganking. So as we talk about getting the maize, cleaning and doing all that, soaking and doing all that, we try to identify the critical control points one, where we say that at this point maybe the contamination will not be all that high.
Mhm.
At this point, maybe after the cooking, some of the contamination may be off. And we realize the critical control points too. At
Mhm.
this stage, the contamination will be high. So you've talked about adding the pepper to the kinky. So we've seen that this will be the critical control point too, because the pepper will just be eaten raw like that. So
Mhm.
contamination at this point may be high.
Yeah.
And we said that they introduced the hazard control points principle in 1973. This principle, you said that it was introduced because when people produce after the production is being made
Check,
and
check
they,
from the slide later whether it's 73, but I think so. I think it was 73 or 79, one of them. Then it came to
okay,
1999 and then on and on. Okay, continue. But check. I'm just
okay,
talking from my brain. I'm tired.
okay. So we also said that when people produce after they produce their this thing and it's being tested and does not meet the standard, then you have to condemn all that they produce.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
why this was introduced. Here they check the flow of the distance. So when you are producing something at what level, you know where you go wrong and you can correct from there. Then, so we said that they first started with three principles
Mm-hmm.
before they moved to the seventh and the ninth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now we need someone to talk about the GMPs. Regional manufacturing practices. I spoke about it. So many of them. What are the examples? Covering your hair, wearing an apron, your African socks. All this and anything that you do to prevent cross contamination, to prevent direct contamination, to prevent giving your helping to produce products under very hygienic conditions. So if it's, for example, a restaurant, there should be a rubbish container that is well covered, that is kept well, so that you don't have any mice breeding in your house or your industry, etc. And that is also very important. Mm, okay. Those who are quiet, they are not contributing. Saturday, what time do you have the class at? Saturday, what time do you have the class? That one is experimental study, right? Or what is it? Me, I'm confused. When do we have a class Saturday, right?
Yes, Prof.
Yeah. What course is it? Food chemistry. What is it? Experimental study of food.
Experimental studies.
Okay. Okay. And the time is what? 11.
11:50.
Oh, okay. That's almost all. Okay. Mm. Yo. So for this evening, I'm recapping so that I can sleep. I'm tired. For this evening, we looked at our unit 923. We reviewed some of the terms. We looked at tolerance level, margin of safety, and when we say foodborne illness, what does it mean? Um, when we talk about um, yeah, so when we talk about all these things, we say that basically when we talk about food safety, it should be hygiene, preparing food under hygienic conditions to prevent any disease causing issues. And so we first look at the terms and the concepts, and then we try to distinguish between food poisoning and other forms of uh, food. And then we moved on to look at the HACCP, the acronym, and what it means, and the principles which are based on. And then we talked about the fact that after identifying the hazard, you need to identify the critical control points. And as well as how um, these hazards or critical control points could be managed well, so at the end of the day, the product that comes out is safe. Mm. And then we also moved on to talk about some type of microorganisms and the kind of diseases they formed. We try to look at the signs and symptoms. We try to look at all those things. All those things we looked at gave us a solid foundation there. Um, then we looked at the GMPs too and said that they are also equally important to help produce seafood that will pass the standards expected of it so that there'll be less cost should there be any issues, so that other people who are registered to perform. Okay, so I think we'll leave the risk assessments. We'll all go and read, and when we meet again next week Tuesday, we'll try and finish that up before we move on to the unit 4. Any questions? Okay. If there are no questions, then I'll call it a day. I'm beginning to usually fall asleep. All right. Uh, okay, so continue reading. Now that you have the slides,
Thank you, Prof.
continue reading. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
Mm,
very much.
thank you too.
Thank you, Prof. Good night.
Good night.
Hello. Hello. Tilly.